All right, everybody, welcome back to the Overwatch Collective podcast. Today I have with me Denise, all the way from California. Denise, how we doing?
I'm doing good on this day. How are you doing?
Absolutely fantastic. I know we've been trying to schedule this for a while. I'm glad to finally make this work, kick off season 11 with a good episode. I will introduce Denise here in a second, but first, I want to go over some housekeeping stuff. Been kind of busy on the back end with the Overwatch Collective and everything. So we've been recontracting and revetting our therapists. We currently have 38 contracted therapists covering 40. I think we're at 48 states now. We just lost one state. But we did have like 19 in California. A lot didn't respond due to our
Hmm.
revetting process to recontract everybody. So we're down to 9 contracted therapists in the state of California, which our goal is to have three to five in every state in a podcast with every single one of them. Um, to date, we have connected 316 people in our military first responder community to our therapist. We've either fully covered or financially assisted 3,277 therapy sessions and spent a grand total of $348,346 on therapy. So we're almost at the $350,000 mark, which is pretty cool. And then the next big hurdle is 500K. So for everybody listening, appreciate you, your monthly donations, all that. They all go a very long way. Our podcast sponsor, Brain Performance Technologies. Listen to season 9, episode 20 or season 10, episode 11. But they're taking a bunch of insurances now. Is drug-free, non-invasive to help with depression, TBI, and they're based out of San Jose, California. Um, and so it's companies like that, Russ and Iron Clothing Company, a lot of these companies that are donating to allow us to do the work that we kind of do. So appreciate everybody. I know I'm missing somebody. If I'm missing you, I apologize, but thank you. Denise, that is enough of me kind of talking and doing the admin stuff. So you are a therapist specialized in first responders in California, married to
Hmm.
a police officer in Northern California for 11 years. Coming up in August. Happy early
Hmm. Yep.
anniversary. I know my wife and I just had our first year anniversary, so you guys got us beat by 10 years.
Wow. Congratulations, you guys.
Thank you, thank you. And then we're just going to kind of talk about being a LEO wife, first responder spouse, and everything. So, interested to hear your perspective and excited to get into it. So, can you do a quick little introduction of yourself, please, and we'll get started there?
Yes. So, my name is Denise Gee, licensed marriage and family therapist in California, specializing in working with first responders, and also doing a lot of trauma work, so childhood trauma as well, which they actually end up going hand in hand together. Um, so I think it's a kind of a beautiful combination. And also been married for 11 years in August. And just, I didn't grow up in a first responder family. I didn't have anyone in my family who was anything like that, no military background, nothing. So I just kind of got thrown into this life. Compared to my husband, who does come from a family of firefighters, police officers, dispatchers, like, yeah. So just got thrown into it.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the tough things too. And I talk about this often. I don't know if you've heard it on some of the other podcasts, but I think in addition to the first responder getting some training and awareness in regards to like mental health and all this stuff in the academy, we also need to give some resources to the family members, spouses, significant others. And then honestly, this would probably never happen, but like if you're a 5 year police officer and you start to get into a serious relationship and you get engaged or married, there should probably be some like here's an online training course. Here's an in-person course that the police department, fire department does annually that you can go to kind of learn so
Hmm.
you're not just thrown into the deep end.
Yeah, that would be really nice. If
Yeah.
that was,
So,
if that were to happen. I mean, I know there are organizations out there who really work to support spouses, but I think I think departments can do a better job of like owning that and supporting their families and their spouses, partners. Um, I think they can do better. So that's kind of my hope and my goal actually of my long-term goal is collaborating more with police departments to bring more support to their families and loved ones and spouses because it's not just that officer that you see in front of you. There's people behind him at home being
Mm-hmm.
impacted as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess let's kind of start there. So what was your experience like being thrown into this community? I know there's a lot that goes on with it. It's dangerous. You're missing events. It's the traumatic calls. It's the trying to text and having a conversation and then going dark for an hour or two.
Hmm.
There's the abrupt, hey, I got to go by.
Yeah, call you back by.
Yeah, kind of tell us about your experience if you can.
Yeah, I think there's kind of two experiences. I think there's the experience, between me and my husband and our relationship. And then I think there's the experience of us interacting with like other people, whether it's like family or just other people. Like, so I think, for example, like in our marriage, like when we first got married, it was fine, no big deal. Like, you're doing your job, I'm pretty independent, like, I got stuff to do, like, I'm living my life, I'm not sitting at home twiddling my fingers or anything like that.
Mhm.
So it was kind of like that for a few years. And then I started my own master's program to become a therapist. So we just kind of were side by side, chugging along. And then, so 2019, we had our first kiddo. And I think even then there was an adjustment, but still, I think I took a lot on of like, well, you work really hard, or like, oh, you had like a long shift, or like, I'll take that primary caretaker role and like not ask too much. I mean, and it's not that he didn't help. He did help. He
Mhm.
was involved, but there was a lot that I was quietly carrying to I'm like, oh, I don't want to bother him. It's fine. So there was that going on. And then before I get into part two of that, kind of what I said earlier of like the interaction with like other people. We had gotten married, and I think a few months in, I was like, hey, we should join like because we attend church, we should join like a small group for like young married people. Like I think that'd be really good for us. And so we joined, and it didn't take long for it to be like instead of, when they would do the weekly check-in, hey everyone, how's it going? It didn't take long to turn into like from hey John and Denise, how are you doing, to hey John, how was work this week?
Mm.
And my husband, being the new police officer that he is, and he's such a storyteller. He's such a storyteller. Like that was just this recipe. And I at that time 11 years ago, I didn't really stand up for myself a whole lot. I was just the good police wife right there, being supportive and quiet. And
Mhm.
that was just like the perfect recipe of like that group becoming all about him, and I think I called it quits on the group because I was like, I don't want to go anymore. Like, it's just like them asking about you. There's no focus on our marriage, how we're doing. So I think that would be like like that really sucked because we were like newly married and all that stuff. And then that we had that same experience a few years ago, and it's like, okay, like, the message of like, well, you're just like, he just works so hard and you just need to be quiet and there's not really space for you, or like, well, you signed up for this, or
Mm.
well, it's the job. Um, and just getting those kind of responses from other people is always like really discouraging, disheartening, of just being like, you need to know your place, and your place is to be quiet and like don't say anything. Um, so I think that's kind of been like my experience for like a long time, or people coming up and like, oh man, are you just so worried he's gonna get shot? Like, and not really. I'm actually worried he's gonna die from a medical condition, actually. Like, so I think just the perception that I think people were like, well, you just must be like so sick at home worried. And it's like, well, yes, but I'm also living my life. Like my life is not on hold. Like I'm still a
Mhm.
person,
Mhm.
getting a degree, trying to become a therapist. So, that was kind of, and I don't really think he quite knew that stuff was happening, or like maybe that I was having those experiences, or even if I did, I don't really think it quite registered because part of it, he's just so new at being a cop. So, like, I don't really know how much capacity he had to hold space, like, oh, this must be hard for you. but not that he couldn't hear me. I just don't think it clicked. He's a new cop. It's exciting.
Yeah.
It's fun. So fast forward to 2021, we had our second kid, and I would say that's when like everything imploded. Of, we had just moved, we had done a remodel, I had given birth, we still weren't in our new house. Of course, he's working a ton of overtime because he wants to pay for this new house and unexpected remodel. I'm at home doing everything. And and I'm like, well, I need your help. And he just goes, well, I am helping him. I'm bringing in the money. I'm like, okay, but I need you, like your presence. And he goes, well, I can't. I need to make money. So, both of us very valid needs and goals, but just not on the same page. So I think 2021 had our second kid, and I think that's just kind of when like I just got really mad. And I was like, I'm not, doing this anymore. Like, I'm not going to be passive. I'm not going to let I'm not going to quietly take things on. Um, Kind of calling him out more on stuff. And I definitely think like, I think it's good that I did that, but also probably the way I did it was also not the best way. So then we also just kind of fell in the cycle of like, I'm really angry, he shuts down, I get angry, he shuts down, and we're just like in this cycle. And it took a few years to pull out of it. And I know like someone asked me recently, like, well, how did you guys get through it? Did you go to couples counseling? And we haven't gone to couples counseling, but we each started our own work individually. And I think just having like that space for us to like work through stuff individually changed the way we were showing up at home for each other.
Got it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
So,
I
yes.
really I appreciate being willing to come on here and share that and everything, right? Because it's like it's not an easy thing to go through, and I think that's one of those things where a lot of I think first responder and then like the military side of it too, relationships, there's such like a lack of communication and you get so caught up in like the identity of the job and wanting to be the best so that you have a good reputation at the department or whatever that sometimes you kind of sacrifice some stuff for your marriage, you know what I mean? So like I'm glad that
Mm-hmm.
you guys were able to work through that. It's not
Yeah.
an easy thing to do.
Well, and I think like you mentioning that too, like I think that also added to my resentment personally is because he is very good at his job. They have the award ceremony every year. He's always getting an award. And, part of it, and, when we're at these functions or whatever, and, the LT's coming up or the captain or the chief, and they're like, oh man, your husband's so this and that. And there's a part of me that's like, thank you so much. Like, that's so nice to hear that he's this way at work. But
Hmm.
at home, there's just a different version.
Yeah,
And I think that was the resentful part of like, for me, why can you show up so well at work and at home, I feel like I have to pull teeth.
yeah, yeah. That
Yeah.
that makes sense, and I think that's one of the contributing factors why our first responder like the relationships in this community are so difficult, right? Like the rate of unfortunate divorces and everything is very high, and it does take a lot of work in this
Mm-hmm.
profession in this first responder career to get through it and to have a healthy marriage. And I mean, my wife and I we're fantastic, and we've worked on a lot of things, and we're open, and the communication is amazing. And but that's very rare, I feel like, in my opinion. Then
Mm-hmm.
you don't really see that a lot because it's not the easy thing to do. And like that's fantastic that your husband gets all these awards, but like what you mentioned, it's like, okay, he can't show up for me at the house, but then he's showing up at the department to get all these awards. But then at the end of the day, you're the priority, you're the family, you're the spouse. And if something happens at work and he can no longer be a police officer, then he's at home, and the last thing you want is a broken home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's, conversations we've had too of, at the end of the day, like you come home to me, you come home to the kids. Like you don't go home to your department. It's not your department that's going to be comforting you. the way like your spouse does. And so that those have been like really hard. I want to say hard, but also very emotional conversations. And I think part of it too of like our cycle, and I think other people can identify with this, is that things were uncomfortable at home. So now he is going to work because it's easier to go to work
Yep.
than to come home. Oh, I have to go in early. Oh, I have to stay late. Oh, I have this whatever op we're doing this weekend. I'm going to pick it. But then of course that makes me angry because I'm like, I want you home. I know I'm angry, but I want you home. I'm asking for you to be home in the most unlovable way.
Yeah, and then so you're, and I appreciate, like I said, I appreciate you sharing all this because these are some of the common things that we see. And
Mm-hmm.
in your experience, let's kind of turn this. Like, what are some tips and tricks that you would give to the first responders, service members, or spouses or significant others out there that are listening to this to not let it wait 5 to 10 years to go through all this stuff and
Yeah.
be aware of, and then keep like a open line of communication and to work on each other? Like, what are some things that you would recommend?
Yeah, I think both people realizing that this job is really just a job. That, the shift is gonna end, your career is gonna end, and what is left over after that, like that's what matters, like who you go home to at the end of the shift, when you retire, like that's really what's gonna matter. I think remembering to, and this is maybe for the first responder, or maybe the spouse as well, but all the awards and the accolades and the cool op and the yeah man, like good job, high fives, like they're gonna be forgotten. They're gonna be forgotten over time. And I think for me, what was a really big turning point was, we have kids. Like our kids matter, right? Like to me, it's like leaving this legacy for our children, right? Because then I'm also thinking of my grandchildren.
Mm.
Like, how are we showing up as parents for our kids? What are we teaching them? What are they showing them? And then, how are they going to show up for their families? Right? I don't want to hear their spouses say something that's like, ooh, that's our fault. You
Yep.
know?
Yep.
So that's like the big motivation for me, is like the legacy of like what are we teaching our kids? What examples are we showing? And at the end of the day, like he comes home to me, and yeah, he comes home to me, and what kind of relationship do I want? When he retires at, maybe 57, like what is our relationship going to look like, and who are we going to be, and are we still going to be John and Denise?
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
like we are the most important people, like not our jobs and like what we do. So I think really encouraging couples to like just remember that, like. And I think something else that I've learned too, and this was more recent, number two with couples is, they are not the enemy and you are not the enemy, right? Like I had this realization of, because I think for a while I was like, oh, I'm not a good police wife. I'm not cut from the right cloth to do this job. Like, I don't really know about this. Like, I'm just not made of the stuff that all the other police wives are made of, whatever stuff I imagined, right? But then I realized like, wait a minute, like it's not about that at all. It's not that I'm bad or good, or he's bad or good, or that either of us are incompetent or incapable. Is that this job is demanding, and this job is asking for things of him and of me that puts an extra strain on this marriage. And so it's neither of us is our like a bad guy. Like we are on the same team, and it's the job that we have to deal with together. Um, so I would also encourage couples to remember that too. Like it's not you versus him, it's you two together as a team. And not even versus the job, but because it's not necessarily, it doesn't have to be a competition, but you guys need to be together, and the job is what you guys face together.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. And I think like both people being able to hear each other out, like the spouse being able to hear from the first responder, like what the job means to them and the toll it takes on them, and like the pressure, the demand, and have that understanding and empathy, even if it's hard to hear that there's something else demanding your time, your spouse's time. but also for the first responder to hear like, hey, this is hard on your spouse. Like, this is not a cakewalk. Like, yeah, they may not be like working the shift and carrying a gun and going to those calls, but they feel it in a different way. They also carry that burden just differently.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I don't think there's any way that like the first responder would be able to fully understand what the spouse goes through and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I do think something that would be beneficial is um, like going on a ride along with a police officer, just doing like a shift or two, because it kind of does open your eyes of what your spouse is going through on patrol, for example. Even if you're at the firehouse or you're a paramedic or a dispatcher, like I think there could be something to that where it's like, hey, all the spouses and significant others, you're going to do one ride along or two ride alongs this year, and we're going to get some awareness out there for what your spouse is going through, because maybe that'll help the relationship. And when you help the relationship and you have a good home life, that translates into having a good police officer, firefighter, dispatcher out on the streets in the real world and in the dispatch center. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
What are your
Mm-hmm.
thoughts on that?
Yeah, I like doing ride-alongs. So that is something, part of it, I did it before with my husband, especially before kids. I would do them more frequently. Since kids, it's been harder. Actually just did one with him back in May, so that was really fun. But I really, and I've done it with other departments too, just because being a therapist that works with first responders.
Mhm.
So, I always enjoy them and I always come back home with like a renewed appreciation of like, what the job is, what it looks like because, I usually do swing shift, 2 to 7, 2 to 8. I just got 6 hours, they do 4 days a week, 3 days a week, 10 to 12 hour shifts.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I always come back with a renewed, um, appreciation. I think he appreciates it too, that I'm willing to like put myself in those situations and learn more about his job and like what he does. I was gonna say too, because I know sometimes the conversation around is like, hey, like, first responders, go home and talk to your spouse about it, spouse about your job and your calls. And I think part of me agrees with that, and part of me feels like both people have to be willing to do that. The spouse being able to hear the first responder, like what he wants to share, if he wants to share anything, and also the first responder being willing to talk. Um, like I said earlier, my husband loves to tell stories, and he is such a storyteller, and like not just like it can go like 5-10 minutes into like the details of a call, and sometimes I'm like, okay, get to the point. Or
Yeah.
he starts the thing, but then he like does the prequel of like, and I just have to tell him, hey,
Get to the point.
get to in the nicest way possible, So I think part of what we've had to learn too, at least in our relationship, is I do have boundaries around what he shares with me, meaning this. Um, he needs to tell me if he's gonna tell like, hey, I need to tell you like a serious call or like a really hard call that I had. Because I remember there was one time I was on the couch eating ice cream, minding my own business, and he just came home and told me this terrible call, and I was just so unprepared. And I was just like, I want to hear your story, but you cannot do it that way ever again. Like, you need to give me a warning. I'm just eating ice cream, minding my own business. So
Ice cream.
you're ruining my ice cream. Yeah. But even that too of like, hey, like if you guys, the couple is going to talk, give a warning to your spouse, let them know. And I think even giving that warning too, that can alert the spouse of, oh, this is important. I need to pay attention.
Yeah.
Oh, they need my attention right now. Compared to the first responders trying to say something and the spouse is like totally unaware that this is going to be
Mhm.
important. So then you can have a much more quality conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get you. And um, I'm sure he benefits from having you be a therapist as well. And it's the same thing. My wife's a therapist. So like there'll be times when I text her or when we're on the phone, I'm like, oh, we just went to this really bad call. And then it's like a follow up. It's like, hey, do you want to talk about it or do you need anything? Or, um, but yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely one of the things that I've heard a lot where it's like, do I go home and tell my wife or husband what I went through and experienced, or do I not? And it kind of just depends. But the last thing that you would want is to like feel off as a first responder to go home and then bring that negative energy there, and then have something clash with the relationship. So we've talked quite a bit about like soft landings, or when you get home from work, it's like sit in the driveway for 10 minutes or tell your spouse, be like, hey, had a rough day, had a few bad calls. I'm going to take the long way home, or I'm going to sit in the
Mm-hmm.
driveway before I come home and be into mom or dad role. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's something beneficial that we've heard a lot, that we've heard from a lot of first responders.
Yeah. Well,
Are
and when they come home, eat a meal and take a shower.
yeah,
Like, he has a take-home car right now, so he's not changing out of his uniform till he gets home. So it's like when he comes through that door, the kids kind of know like, hey, let dad, he might say hello,
yeah,
but let daddy go, take a shower, he needs to come back and eat dinner. And that is not the time to have a serious conversation. Like, yeah, he needs to like get his needs met.
mhm,
Because there's been times like I haven't been patient for that, and it always ends up being a clash because I'm wanting something and he's not ready to give it.
mhm.
And so I think part of it too is like just give him a little space and he'll be ready, and then it'll be a much more productive,
Yep.
connected conversation.
Mhm. Yeah, I like it. And then let's see, you got like 5 to 10 minutes left.
Hmm.
I'm curious, what are some things as a therapist specializing in first responders that you think first responders out there need to know, like for themselves to work on? Obviously, not like avoiding things if you're not
Yeah,
right, or like what are your three things that you think that first responders should know?
3 things a first responder should know. I think number one is the job impacts you more than you think it does. I just, hear a lot of times like, oh yeah, it's fine. It's the job. It's fine. A lot of minimizing. And I think part of it is true, but also like, if you're going to shut down, like we can't pick and choose where we shut down. Like if we're going to start shutting down, parts of ourselves, that's eventually going to creep into all other aspects in our lives. And that includes, marriage as well. So I think like realizing, hey, it impacts you more than you think it does. I had someone tell me one time, he was on probation and he was like, "Oh, I told my wife as soon as she this is my number 2. As soon as she sees that I've changed, that I'm going to quit this job. I will quit this job." And part of me, I told him, I was like, "Hey, I really, I think that's really admirable that you said that. I do think though it's not a matter of if this job changes you, it's a matter of when and how this job will change you. And I don't know if quitting is the right answer compared to as soon as your wife says, hey, you've changed, you sit and, then you say, okay, honey, I'll go get help. I'll go seek help. I'll go talk to someone about this. I was like, that is really the best thing you can do because you might quit the job, but still be a changed person. Like, that's not really like working things through. And so that would be my number 2 of, as soon as you get the feedback, hey, you've changed, you're different, um, or whatever it is that the feedback you're getting from your spouse, go talk to someone. I'm a little biased, find a therapist.
Mhm.
Um, and you don't have to see them forever. You just go in, talk about a few things, get some things sorted out. And then you can even just come back for a tune up down the line. It's not a forever thing to be meeting with a therapist. And it's okay to have a list and say, my wife thinks I need to work on these things. you know, like that's okay too. Like if that's what gets someone to therapy, like that'd be really, um, that's all that matters. And number 3 is have a life outside. Oh man, maybe, I have 2 things competing for spot number 3.
Mhm.
Maybe I'll have 4 things.
You can do portents. That's totally fine.
Okay. Yeah. Number 3 is have a life outside of law enforcement, have a life outside of your identity as a cop. That's something I really encourage. Like my husband, I'm like, you are so much more than just a cop because we'll go out like around family and friends and everyone's like, John, tell us like what's a really bad call you've been on lately or what's the worst call? And I hear those and I just roll my eyes when I hear those questions being asked, and there's a part of me that gets protective over him because it's like, you guys, there's so much more to him being a cop.
Yeah.
Please ask him about anything else in his life. And so, really making sure that people have first responders stuff besides this. For my husband, he's really into his chickens. So that has been an unexpected hobby for him the past few years.
Good.
Yeah. And then the fourth one I was going to say too is, make sure you're checking with your spouse. Check in with your spouse, make sure they're doing okay. Hey, how are you handling this? How's the job impacting you? And being willing to hear them out, because the default is like, well, the spouse, like, they should just be supportive. They shouldn't really be complaining, like very dismissing comments. And if the first responder can check in with their spouse, I think that would mean a lot to them. That, the spouse matters, they're important. Neither one is better than the other. Both are important,
Yeah.
equally important. Yeah.
No, I definitely agree with those four things, and it's not the first time I've heard those either. So there's definitely a trend that we're seeing, and need to get that out to the community and everything. So,
Mm-hmm.
and this is the first step, and that's why I was so excited to have you on the podcast and be able to do this. So, where can people find you? Can you do a plug for yourself, your website, social media, all that stuff? So, everybody that's listened to this, if they want to get in contact with you, they can reach out.
Yeah. So my practice is located in Roseville, California, virtual throughout California. And it's just my name, Denise Gee Counseling. That is going to be my website, denisegeecounseling.com. It's my Instagram. So it's all pretty connected like that. So people can reach out to me, website, Instagram, and, happy to support people, whether they're looking for services for themselves, as a first responder or their spouse. I'm just happy to be that resource for people. I think the weird part is me being a therapist and a first responder spouse. Like, it took me a long time to ask for help, even though I'm a therapist myself. I didn't really know where to go. And so part of my long-term goal is being that light for people, and especially for spouses, but that beacon of like, hey, like, there are resources and you can get help and you don't have to carry it alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And then one more question. So our motto at the Overwatch Collective is one more is one less. Comes from season 1, episode 6, of a service member who lost a bunch of friends to suicide. So it was kind of like, hey, if we could do one more podcast, or you can connect one more person to a resource, that's one less suicide. So
Mm-hmm.
we ask our guests at the end of every episode what one more is one less means to them. So without further ado, what does it mean to you?
Yeah. I think that goes back to my legacy when I was talking about kids. One more, helping one more person is one less person that's going to walk away. Um, I don't know if injured is the word I want to use. Maybe injured is the word I want to use. I'm not quite sure. But just one less person, right? Because like I said earlier, that first responder has a family. Probably, probably, you know, and let's assume there's two kids, right? And so it is to help that one person it can be more than one less. It might be three people that you're helping. And then it's like, the legacy of like grandkids as well. And so that's just kind of how I see things, like in our marriage and our parenting, of like, man, if my kids, if their spouse comes and tells me something that they're doing, I hope they do. And I'll be like, I raised you better than that,
Mm.
you know, or if grandkids too, right? Like, your dad did what? Oh, he's in trouble with me. So I think that's for me of like the legacy of, it's not just like me and him or the first responder. Like,
Yeah.
we don't live in isolation, we live in connection with other people. And it all has a ripple effect. So that's what that means to me. It's legacy.
Yep. Sweet.
Yeah.
I love
Hmm.
it. So cool, because everybody's explanation of what one more is one less it means is different. So
Hmm.
appreciate you sharing. I appreciate you coming on. Like I said in the beginning, I know we've been trying to do this for a while, so I'm excited we're able to kick off season 11 with a good episode and get things rolling. But this wraps it up. Everybody, if you have any questions or want to get connected to Denise, she already gave you all the contact info and everything, and then everything will also be in the show notes. And then if you cannot figure it out, reach out to us and I will get you connected. But everybody, thank you for listening, tuning in to season 11, episode 1. Thank you again, Denise. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Greg. It was great.
Of course. Take care, everybody.